Cody Burch, welcome to the Story Engine podcast. It is so exciting to have you on the show today.
Hey, what's up, Kyle? Thank you for having me. I'm really pumped to get going.
So you have an incredible story that I really want to explore about kind of the past year of your life and a lot of the things we've created. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you the question I ask all of my guests at the opening. Tell me about a moment in your life that has defined you and really helped you become who you are today, serve who you serve, and have you do what you're doing.
I've always identified as a tech guy. That was the role I fit in the last company I was at. So the last company I was at, I was there for 10 years and I was just a tech guy. I learned all the technology. I used all the technology. And when we would go to events, I would just hover in the corner and learn what I needed to learn. I didn't ever need to meet anybody. Wasn't very social. I didn't see any value in relationships or being out in the front. I was there to learn the technology, learn how to implement it for ourselves and for our clients. And that was just how I saw the world. And so I remember when I was getting the itch of entrepreneurship in the fall of 2016, it became very apparent I needed to transition out of that job I'd been at for 10 years, which was a very difficult mourning and grieving process. And the last part of that story was I had an annual review to wrap up how that year had gone. And it was a breakfast meeting that turned into a lunch meeting. We were just there all morning. It wasn't going well. So just imagine like an awkward meeting of being very apparent that it wasn't going to work out much longer. And as that meeting wrapped up, we went outside to kind of say our goodbyes. And it was December. So it was right before our Christmas party, right before the holiday break. And I remember my former employer, he said, "Hey, if you ever want a recommendation, I can put in a good word for you." And he didn't mean it in any bad way. He meant it in a helpful way. I really believe that. But in my head, I heard, "Hey, if you want to just be another tech guy for somebody else, I can put in a word for you and I'll get you another tech guy job, another right-hand person, tech implementer type job." And I really use that as fuel to fuel me to say, hey, he doesn't even see it. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, I want to start my own business. I want to solve my own problems. I want to serve people on my terms. And it was in that moment where I really felt a shift in my identity, like how I saw myself, if that makes sense. And so since then, I've always identified as an underdog. I've got this sign behind my head temporarily. I'm going to probably take it down eventually, but it says "prove them wrong." And it's just how I've manufactured a lot of the stuff I think we'll chat about today of that motivation of how to move forward in the world and solve interesting problems over and over again and not give up and keep going ahead. And I think that was the real moment that really changed everything for me.
I think that's incredible. And I was gonna ask about this sign because it's if you're watching on YouTube or have ever seen any of the content Cody makes, it's very like it catches your eye right away. And I've always wondered what the motivation behind that was, but it's definitely part of your message. And since then, it's been so cool seeing everything develop, because I remember working alongside of you in one company and seeing how you've just kind of established yourself since then, since you've gone out and really created your own path. And it's been amazing to see what you've been doing. You've been doing great social media posts. I see a lot of your presence just even on Facebook and things like that, but creating your own show, your own podcast, creating your own book, and most recently having an event, which was just 2 weeks ago, if I remember right.
Yep.
And I'd love to hear and kind of go through this process with you and kind of explore this journey from first setting out on your own and really deciding and perhaps buying the "prove them wrong" sign to where you are today, because I think you've made a lot of great progress and you've come forward and really establishing yourself as an authority and as something much more valuable than just another tech guy. And so first, I'd love to hear, like, what were some of the first moves? How did you set the foundation for this new direction and this new journey you were going to take?
So a great story framework I heard is once upon a time, and then suddenly, and then luckily, and then happily ever after, right? So once upon a time, suddenly this thing happened, but luckily this silver lining appeared, and then happily ever after. So once upon a time I was a tech guy for this company, and then suddenly found myself unhappy and wanted to be entrepreneurial. And then luckily I had a skill set to serve other people. Meaning I was really good at Facebook ads. I was really good at lead generation. I was really good at online marketing. And then that's how I got started. I took that skill set I had to the world and just basically hung my sign out on the street and said, hey, I'm open for business. You may have known I do online marketing for this one company and for this subset of people, but now I do that for anybody. So anybody who needs any help, let me know. Now, quite frankly, when I got started, I did anything and everything I could that would pay anything. I built membership sites. I built WordPress sites. I did some graphic design. I did some blog posts. I did some content marketing. I did some email marketing. And I'm quite frankly, I'm pretty good at a lot of those things. I'm not really good. I'm pretty good. And I wanted to make, the number in my head was I had to make $7,000 a month. That was the math of how I could not be so disruptive financially to my family, because I was the main breadwinner of our family. I didn't have any money saved. I didn't have any old dead rich uncle that left me an inheritance. I just had to figure this out and had to make money for my wife and kids. And so that first month I did, I made just over $7,000 and then thought, well, that looks like that's going to work. And what if I could get to $10,000? That's just this arbitrary entrepreneurial number that we hit. And then I did that soon after as well. But it was through, number one, saying yes to everything. And that was something I thought was a necessary part of my journey that I wanted to churn through as fast as possible. There's no way to sustain a business.
You got to get out of there fast. Yeah. It'll drive you crazy. I've been there too.
So I just wanted to keep it super short and get through that. And then within a few months, I was just doing Facebook ads, just doing sales funnels, and I was still doing email. That was the 3-pronged approach. That's just the worldview I had. If you want to sell something online, you need an ad to send traffic to a funnel, then you need to follow up with an email. And the email stuff didn't bring me a ton of joy, and I stopped doing that pretty quickly. But by about 6 months in, I had it, again, I wanted to go as fast as possible. And when I would think through those first 6 months, it sounds like it was years. Like, no, that wasn't year 2, that was month 2. Like I just went as fast as possible. And I did some stuff for free. And then I raised my prices, and I think my first ads client was nothing. Second ads client, I charged $200. Third ads client, I charged $500. Fourth ads client, I charged $1,000. Fifth ads client, I charged $2,000. And then I haven't raised my prices much from there, but that was all within 6 months of launching. So that was that first evolution of take this problem I saw in the world of helping people get more leads and make more sales using the power of online marketing, and then doing it for them.
Tell me about one of the skills that when starting out, you had a good basic skill set to get you going. What was one of the skills that you were critically deficient in that you needed to build up fast to succeed?
The sales part was tough for me. I had never sold in the past. I had never needed to sell, and needed, or whatever you would want to call it, enroll new clients, or position myself as an authority that was worth being paid what I was asking for. That was something I had to figure out really quickly, which also was accompanied by having no clue really how to run any kind of books, or bookkeeping, or accounting, or invoicing. And so again, within month 5 or 6, I hit a turning point, kind of a hockey stick on the growth chart. And I was forgetting to send invoices. I was forgetting to bill clients. I was having so much fun doing the thing, because I think that's kind of how we all are. We're craftsmen in those ways. I was forgetting the nuances of the business, like, oh, they never even signed their agreement, but I already went ahead and get started. Or they didn't even pay their second half of their invoice, and it was due 60 days ago. So I had to.
That's pretty nice. You're in a good spot if you're having so much fun you're forgetting to bill. I mean, it's better if you're billing, but that's like a good place where I think it's something that a lot of people would love to be in, where you're in so much of a groove and you're in your zone of genius that like things like that become can pass you by. But again, good to build that skill up too.
Yeah, so I got better at it, and then I hired it out. I mean, I brought on my first position I hired was an ops manager, and she's still with me to this day, and she's fundamentally changed my business and allowed me to experience some of the growth I've had as well.
Is that Allison by chance? Because she's been on the podcast. And
oh yeah.
She's a genius. Everybody, Allison Caffrey's a genius.
Yeah, she's the best. I try not to tell people about her, because every time I do, they hire her. Like, try to hire her away from me. So
don't hire her. Leave a spot for me soon. I need her next. Yeah, but she's a genius.
Yeah, she's so great. And so maybe this is a fun transition point. Like, getting that part of my business figured out. I don't know about you, Kyle, but business got easier for me. And then I decided to mess it up with some of the other things you talked about with books and podcasts and live events. So we can talk about that next if you want.
Yes. That is the next thing I wanted to talk about. Out of bookkeeping and into book writing. Tell me about the 1 Hour Funnel book.
So yeah, here's how that came about. I had the idea for this notion of a 1 hour funnel in August of that first year. So I jumped in January. My first day on the job was February on my own for the first time ever. And in August, I registered the domain name and filed for the trademark for this idea of a 1 hour funnel. In my head, it was just a quick way to launch marketing funnels. It's just what I'm about. I'm an engineer. I'm a tech guy. I'm an efficiency guy. I just wanted to do this quickly. And in my business, I thought the more I can systemize how I fulfill on these sales funnels, the more profit I'll have, the more predictable results I can get for clients. And so I was taking what worked with winning campaigns and separating it out from what didn't work with campaigns that I was launching that weren't working, finding out what the commonalities and made a little roadmap, and then put in mind like, well, this would be a really cool book, or it'd be a cool podcast. I didn't know what it could be, but I was like, this could be something. And another mutual friend of ours, Chandler Bolt, has a course called Self-Publishing School. I bought that like first thing. I jumped in February. I think I bought that course in March or whenever it was open in 2017. And it was about how to self-publish a book. Now, full disclosure, I didn't really ever log in. I didn't really look at it. I kind of did, but then I got busy. But in my head, I was like, I know I want to write a book. I know I want to write a book. I know I want to write a book. And knowing Chandler, it'll never be this price again. It's going to get more expensive along the way, right? And so I bought that course and then didn't do much with it. So that was 2017. And then in 2018, I launched a beta group that would become what I thought. What I did first was I launched my own course. I made the 1 hour funnel a course, and it launched to tens of people with a cumulative yawn. Like the market didn't really care. They didn't know who I was. And that was when it hit me too. Like it would serve me to be better known and to stop being behind the boards in my home office and still identifying kind of as a tech guy and get out in front more. And so what I did is when that webinar launched to sell my course, the 1 hour funnel course, I decided to start a podcast to document the whole journey. I had no followers on YouTube, no followers on Instagram or Facebook. I had no Facebook group. I had no email list. I had literally nothing, zeros across the board. I had dozens of agency clients was my email list, which was just in Gmail. Like I didn't have a CRM or anything. And so episode 1 is, hey, what's up? I'm Cody, and I'm going to document this process. And the podcast is called Cody Builds a Business, and it's documenting that journey. In the opening credits, it says to going from literally nothing and nobody to $1 million business. Now, at the time of this recording, I think I'm about $924,000 away from hitting that $1 million mark, but we're getting there. We're on our way. And it's just so, and here's what I thought would happen. I was so brilliant. Launch a podcast. It'll be new and noteworthy on Monday. The world will love it. I'll host a webinar on Thursday. All of the people on the show will, of course, they'll sign up for the webinar. Then they'll buy my course, and I'll need to decide, do I want a vacation in Lake Tahoe or a vacation in Aspen? Like, what do I do now?
On Sunday, right?
Right, on Sunday, exactly.
Yeah.
And that, of course, didn't happen. So episode 2 is, I'm doing a webinar, and episode 3 is, well, that didn't work. And like episode 4 is, well, what do we do now? And episode 5 is, Cody is depressed. And episode 6 is, Cody picks himself up off the floor. Like, but it's so great to document that. So for those listening, number 1, you'll listen to the episodes because they're useful and they're kind of funny and helpful. Number 2, document your journey, however that is most comfortable for you, like a podcast like this with Kyle, like a YouTube channel, like a blog, or whatever that is. So now I can look back at that and see what I've done and where I've come from and what I've learned and how I've grown. And so the course came with the podcast. Those both dropped at the same time. And then the turning point there for me too is I got on the phone with a guy named Dean Jackson. He's a marketing guy. And he said, you should write a book. Like the course would be a great book. And that's one of the lenses through which Dean sees the world, is he helps people write books. And it's like, no, I don't want to write a book. I mean, I do, but I don't. Like, it sounds so hard. Like it would take forever. I want it to be a book that my grandkids will remember. And that's a lot of pressure, and I'm just not ready. And he's like, no, write like a short book. Like write a book that will help your desired customers raise their hand and say, I need some help. And so that was in June. And so the course launched in April, podcast launched in April, book writing process was in June, almost exactly a year ago. And then the book ended up dropping in August.
One of the things that I love about the podcast and the book that I think a lot of people listening in can can really find to be much more manageable and much more applicable to their lives is I do love how it's really short. It's a very crisp book that focuses on a single problem. Actually, my new book, Selling with Story, I wanted to create something like that and I failed. I admire being able to, it's a long book.
Oh, got it.
It's a much bigger book, and but I really set out and I was like, it's going to be crisp, nice. I like that. And I think it's a really useful focused tool. And also, I also appreciate just kind of the short and whimsical consumable nature of your podcast as well. I think it's made it easy for you to create ideas and synthesize ideas and just look around and see, oh yeah, this is something from going on in my life. I think you, and I'd love for you to share this. I think we talked about this on your show, but you were watching your kids play basketball and that turned into an idea. But tell me about just a couple of the little inspirations for mini episodes and how you turn that into content, or some of the most successful ones, because I think this format is really good. It's really personal and it's very easy to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I noticed, what I thought my podcast would be in the beginning was me documenting the journey. So it was like, and I'm joking, it wasn't really, but it's kind of like Facebook in '08, where it's like, hey, I had some eggs, and the world is like, well, I don't care. Like I was documenting in a way, like I had a podcast interview today, and then I did this, I did that, and did this, and did that. And then I thought, well, that's going to run its course. People ultimately probably don't care. They're not that voyeuristic about what I did at the gym that day. And I exaggerated a bit to prove a point. But then I started to document what I was learning, and then I would go on trips, and then people liked that because I would go to $10,000 masterminds, and my fans would be like, well, what was it like? Like who else was there? What'd you learn? What were your top takeaways? I thought, well, that's cool, because I just take it for granted that people don't do that. I don't do it a bunch, but I was able to go to some conferences. Not all of them were 10K. Obviously I couldn't afford that, but some of them were, and they were interesting, and I met cool people and did cool things and got to bring back the top learnings from those episodes. But there was still something where I was trying to put on a front in a way of a persona of what I thought a good podcast host should sound like. And then that lasted till about episode 96, when I think it's 96, where I recorded an episode called Hitting Rock Bottom. And that was in January of this year, I think, is when that episode dropped. And that instantly became my most shared, commented, downloaded episode. And it was about the story I opened up with on here, like just me transitioning out of that job for so long and what that was like, and the fear I faced, and the uncertainty, and then the malaise that I went through, just all of this stuff. I just told the full story in a respectful, historian kind of way. And then people loved that. And then my second biggest download episode was me talking to my wife. We were just, I don't know, my wife, we just have a good chemistry, and she's very funny and charming, and it was just amazing. So people loved that too. So then I thought, well, people sure love this part more than my observations about, whatever I saw at baggage claim at the airport, like a comedian or something, right? I was just like, make an observation, then talk about it. So I try to make sure those episodes are in there, those vulnerable moments. It gives me a place too, where it's, for the most part, it's just me. So it's just me in my home office and a microphone, and I can just open up, and it's a therapeutic for me to do that as well. And then the other thing that I noticed along the way, like you mentioned, is just the observations I would have, like when I'm at the airport, or the person at Starbucks gets your name wrong, or somebody steals your parking spot, or the kid on the basketball team shoots into his own goal, or whatever, right? And you're like, well, what's that like? How does that show up in business, and what can we learn from that? And so, man, I'm a huge fan of regularly documenting your observations in the world to help other people, to serve other people through your experiences. And so my show is a mix of those things. It's my observations. It's my vulnerable moments. It's my most afraid moments and most proud moments. My podcast this last week after my live event, I was like, hey, I'm going to own it. I'm super proud of myself. And I think we don't acknowledge that enough in this world. It's more fun to defer. Oh, it's not me, it's God, or it's not me, or it's my team, or it's not me, it was the hotel, or it was the AV team. Like, no, it was all of those things. Yes, it was God, and yes, it was my team, and yes, it was, but like, I'm going to own it. I did a really good job, and I'm really proud of myself. That was my episode like last Wednesday. And that got good feedback to people like, dude, good for you. Like, I'm rooting for you, and I'm following your journey here. And you just, sounds like you just crushed it. And let's be happy for a minute and not be, melancholy about what you're concerned about or whatever. So super fun. Everybody should do a podcast, in my opinion.
I love that. And that's another thing that I've really enjoyed about what you're doing in your show is you're able to, and yeah, I don't think enough people do that, where there's kind of like, there's this hype, I'm so cool kind of marketing. And I think a lot of us are afraid to become like that. But sometimes it's good to, celebrate and share and be happy. And yeah, I think that more of sharing that authentically is good. And I also think you do a great job at just having calls to action and really moving people forward. Oftentimes you're saying, I know in the episodes leading up to the event, you reach out and you say, hey, I want you to come to this event. I want you to check out this book. And you're standing behind what you're doing, and you're really proud of it. and it comes through in the episode.
Yeah.
One of the next questions I want to ask, this is one of my favorites I've been asking recently. On this journey, you've made a lot of investments. You said you made, $10,000 events and things like that. Tell me about the investment that you made that you were really like, feeling it in the pit of your stomach, like, oh no. And it was kind of a scary move to do. And you're like, I'm not even sure if I should tell my wife about this one, maybe. And then, but you made it, and it was a risk, and it paid off huge.
I mean, yeah, that was one of them. So there was, I don't know. So there's an organization called Mastermind Talks. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, Nicholas Kuzmich, when I was starting to get a lot of momentum at year one in the business. So we were having dinner, and I said, hey, where do people like you hang out? Like, I want to help more influencer, thought leader, guru, course creator, expert businesses with their ads and marketing. He said, well, I go to Mastermind Talks. I was like, great, got that down. What else? He's like, that's the only one. Like, that's all you need to know about. I was like, wow, okay, cool. Well, what is that? He told me, and I said, well, how do you get in? He's like, well, you can't. It's really hard, and you have to know somebody, and it's super expensive. And how much does it cost? And it's $10,000, and it's, you have to get recommended. It's this like secret society, right? So I did some research on it, and then in 2018, I applied to be in it, and according to their website, they have a tougher acceptance rate than Harvard. There's a 15,000 person waiting list, and it's a 150 person event that's run once a year, not 151 people, and not 5 times a year. It's 150 people once a year, and so your odds just are horrible. And I applied to get in, and I asked Nicholas and a couple other people to say, hey, if you think I would be a good fit for this community, could you put in a good word with the organizers and all that stuff? And in March of 2018, I got accepted. And as we all know now, it was $10,000, and I didn't have $10,000 for sure. Like it was at just a dip in the business where I was like, well, I don't have that, but it was one of those where it's like 10K today or 16K in payments or something. Like that interest doesn't make sense at all. I got to find 10 grand on a credit card or somewhere, sell something to get the money. So that was something that was probably the scariest or like the riskiest investment. But by then I knew my business. And so here's my big risk, Kyle, is I'm not super comfortable in crowds. And so to walk into a room of 150 successful entrepreneurs, I knew I wouldn't just start crushing it, high-fiving people, making a bunch of good friends. But I also didn't want to put so much pressure on myself to ROI my 10,000 and then be that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that guy at the event trying to close deals in the bathroom and close deals in the hallway. And so I just wanted to be just fully present, no expectations, serve where I could serve, contribute where I could contribute. They had social events like a great hike, and the hikes were super social because you go for a walk for an hour with other entrepreneurs and you can just talk. And I made great connections on those hikes. So that definitely paid off. Super cool community, tons of interesting people that helped me. I think the biggest takeaway from something like that is just the level that some of those people play on made me think bigger, where I think I want to, it could be an income goal or an impact goal. Like I want to, get 1,000 leads this year. And then you leave there like, what if I could help people get 1 million leads? What if I could try to change the world of online marketing with this skill set that I have, and just dream bigger? Like, what's my moonshot? These people are doing such interesting things. They're, one guy there was like legalizing cannabis in Canada or something. I was like, that's such a big mission. Like, whether you're for or against that or not, it's irrelevant. But like that undertaking is enormous. Like, what a cool mission. And here I am, like trying to get, a couple leads on Facebook. It was like, I got to dream bigger and play bigger. So that's the one that comes to mind.
Absolutely. It's a big risk, but time and time again, when I make investments like that scare me, it gets you into that mindset because, it's something that forces you out of your comfort zone. And now you're like, okay, it is time to play bigger. It's time to make this work, and it's time to make this count. And I'm certain that part of this inspiration and part of what you were doing and part of the world that you've been surrounded in and placed yourself in led to your event. And we know that it's been a big success, but I'd like to hear a little bit about the planning and the purpose and the setup and the promotion of this event, because I was expecting either that or you talking about your event as this big investment. Tell me kind of about the lead up to this event and how you made it into this big success for you.
Yeah. So the event was the hardest thing I've ever done. I I have never been more stressed. And I'm trying to think, as an entrepreneur, like we get, I don't know about you, but you get comfortable. Like I figured out how to make a decent income running ads and marketing. And that was pretty easy. And then I was like, well, I'll mess this up. I'll go write a book. That's going to be hard. Or I'll mess this up now. I'll do, a podcast or whatever. And so for me, I was like, I'll just throw a huge wrench in this whole machine and I'm going to do a live event. And I thought it would be hard. I had done it once before at that last company and it was so hard, but I thought I'm a good marketer. People kind of know me now. Podcast been around for a year. I've got lots of interesting friends. It's in Denver. It's going to be affordable. The ticket prices are going to be a couple $100. I'll probably sell it out instantly. And it was so hard. The first, like the 12 disciples, we all have those 12 disciples, right? The 12 disciples bought instantly. Like, Cody, I believe in you and I'm in. They paid full price. They told their friends. And then that was like probably 4 months out. And then I didn't sell any tickets for months. And I was super stressed. And there were more than one nights of just tears and of just, I remember one night I went upstairs, I worked from home in the basement, and then told my wife, I said, I feel like a fraud. And then I just burst into tears because for me, I'm a good marketer. I know how to get leads and make sales for myself and for clients. And I was like, here I am putting on a marketing event and I have no clue how to market it. I mean, like I was trying everything, but nothing was working. But it felt so good to say that out loud. Like, I feel like an imposter. And then just to deal with that emotion, like let that come out. And she hugged me and she's like, you got this. Like, and cause she didn't know, I'd been putting up a front too for her, like trying to be strong and tough. And I got it. It's probably no big deal. Like, we're going to crush it. But in my head, I had a ton of fear and uncertainty because when you do an event, we were on the hook for something like $30,000 was the financial investment. And it comes in stages. I don't want to go into too many. We paid like a $5,000 deposit for the hotel to reserve the room and reserve the food. And then had to get the AV guy there. And then we had to get a room block that we guaranteed. That was my most stressful day, is when you do an event, you tell the hotel how many rooms you're going to sell. And the day that bill came due, I found out that like none of my attendees were staying at the hotel. So that's all on me. And so that was a low day for me. A friend of mine reached out, how you doing? And I said, I'm doing horrible. I'm having a really awful day because this thing is happening to me and it's going to cost me thousands of dollars. And I just messed up and I feel stupid and I feel blah, blah, blah. So lest any of your listeners think I just crushed it all the time. Every day was roses and I sold it out instantly. It was so hard to fill it.
Every detail of that, like a can of Sprite at an event at a hotel costs $6 or something like that, down to you just think like, I mean, I've been to events and people go to these things all the time. And, you see a water bottle or a little snack pack or something. That's like crazy amounts of money. You'd never pay that much for a can of soda normally, but people just grab them. They're free. And they're like, oh yeah, let's just drink. And yeah, when you see somebody just, at the soda bar putting an extra Dr. Pepper in their backpack for the road, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. There was that for sure. So promotion wise, I did a free plus shipping book funnel. So buy my book, and on the thank you page, it was like, hey, you got the book now. This comes with a ticket to the event. Here's how to redeem your free ticket, which I would do like a seat deposit. That got 0 sales. That didn't work. I did an opt-in funnel, I think it was a free download of the book, and the thank you page was the same thing. Like, hey, this book is amazing, and there's a live experience happening soon. Since you downloaded the book, it's clear you have this problem. Here's how to redeem your free ticket. That got 0 sales. I tried discounted tickets, like $97 tickets. That got 1 or 2 sales. I did a 5-day challenge, which I loved, where it was a lead generation challenge. And at the end of the challenge, I did a webinar about this general concept of online marketing. And I sold the course and I sold an event ticket, and that got 5 tickets sold, I think. So in hindsight, that was like the biggest bang for my buck of getting multiple ticket sales with one promotion. I did a thing called a live stream, which was a 3-hour training. And it was kind of a QVC infomercial, teach for a bit, have a testimonial, make an invitation to the event. That got 0 sales, but that I had to hire a camera crew and a studio space to film that. So what worked in hindsight was chats like this, was interviews with friends and people on my podcast and people on their podcast, and lots of Zoom calls and lots of phone calls and lots of direct messages and lots of Facebook group support, lots of giving. Like we were talking before we hit record, like how you and I support different online communities, just giving was helpful. I had enough goodwill that when I would make that invitation saying, hey, it's clear you have this problem, you need to get this part of your life figured out, like that worked. But they were just one-offs. So most days I was striking out And if I got lucky, I would hit a single, but I never hit a home run. I never hit a grand slam. I never, spoke from stage and closed 20 tickets. Like that it never happened for me. That wasn't my reality. So filling it was super duper hard. And I'm happy to talk about anything else around that filling it side, but the execution, and I knew, and you knew, and everybody knew that Cody and my wife, Christy, and Allison on our team, who we've already said is amazing, would pull off the best event anybody's ever seen, which we did. And then I introduced a new flagship program that people joined there as well, which was super fun. And that's why I see it as a success now. But in hindsight, it was super hard. We maxed out, I've said this a few times now, I maxed out, I have two business credit cards. We maxed them both out. I got home from the event. I had missed 3 payments of other stuff. They're like, hey, we built the card on file. It was maxed out. I was like, yeah, I know. Like, sorry. And so now I'm picking up the pieces of that. So I just want to tell you and your listeners, like, I put it all on the line financially. Not that I would have been bankrupt or lost my house or had to foreclose on things. I don't want to over dramatize that, but I just can't overstate how much I felt like I had at stake to execute this live event. And if that encourages anybody to say, well, I'm going to go for it, just like Cody went for it, then kudos to you.
Cody, I really, really appreciate just the vulnerability and the openness in this. And I think a lot of listeners you can find and take courage that, there's a lot of people out there, like I was saying earlier, that are just hype marketing. I'm so cool. I'm so amazing. But what really comes down to it, and what I'm hearing, and despite the digital marketing and even like being a master at Facebook ads and all of these things, what it really came down to was making human connections, getting in the right room with the right people, getting on the phone with the right people, giving, and contributing however you can. There's no shortcuts. There's no easy ways to your gold-plated helicopters or anything like that. And I so appreciate your openness and your vulnerability in this journey. And I think everybody listening will too. I'd love to, and it just comes down to true human connections. The means and the tech and the methods are all, some work for some people, some don't, but in the end, it's how you connect with people. I'd love to hear any closing thoughts, and where can we go to learn more about you and connect with you further?
Yeah, thanks for saying that, man. So yeah, my closing takeaway is the old adage of dig your well before you're thirsty. So for me, in hindsight, for hosting a live event, and this is true for anything, replace live event with, you have a book that's coming out that you want to launch, or you have a virtual summit you're going to do, or you have a workshop you're going to introduce, or you have a new flagship service or product. I told you at the beginning of the interview here, I don't consider myself a very social person. I'm not a social butterfly. I don't have a ton of, I'd go into a room of 100 strangers and leave with 100 strangers. I wouldn't leave with 20 best friends. I'm just never been that guy. And so but I wish I had been. And so my advice to people listening is knowing that at some point you're going to need to rely on people to help support whatever your dream or your vision is that you're working on. Again, a book, podcast, product, whatever it is, to take the time now to start to make those connections and to give and to connect with people and to see what they're working on and to stay in touch and never ask, just give. And until you're ready at whatever point in a year or 2 or 5 years to say, hey, it happened. I wanted to let you know that I did finally write that book, and I would love your support, a rating, a review, a download, a launch team, or whatever. And people say, I would love nothing more than that. You've been giving to me for 5 years now, or for 5 months, I would love to do that. And so I dug a small well, and then I got very thirsty. And so that's my advice to anybody, is to invest in those relationships now before you need them. And you can't err on the side of being too generous, and you can't err on the side of being too convenient and all those amazing things, and generate as much goodwill as possible.
And where can we go to learn more about you?
That's right. It's the second thing. I'm just giving, man. I'm not ready to ask yet. The best place to go learn about what I'm working on all around the 1 Hour Funnel idea is at onehourfunnel.com. You can grab a copy of the book there for free. The book that started it all, the book that started an event, that started a movement. It's just super fun to have done that. So that's the main hub, and I'm at 1 Hour Funnel on Facebook and on Instagram as well.
Cody, this has been a stunning conversation, and I really appreciate everything you've shared. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast.
Thanks for having me.